edition of From the Shed End podcast with myself, T Dot, and as always, I'm joined by Theo. So first and foremost, how you doing, Theo?
I'm good. I'm very well. I think a lot of the people within England are happy after Tuesday's results, so I can't complain. I'm doing good. Thanks.
Good, good. And yeah, just as always, for anyone listening, you can follow us on Twitter at From the Shed End, and also on Instagram at From the Shed End with underscore between each of the words. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well to our YouTube channel. Really appreciate anyone who does interact with us. So yeah, get subscribing, get following. But yeah, it's been a busy couple of days, couple of weeks to be fair. Obviously, we haven't had much in terms of Chelsea related to discuss, but the Euros has kept us busy. And obviously we had some brilliant games this week as well. The week isn't over, but we've had some brilliant games. But what's your thoughts overall so far on the Euros?
I think it's been a brilliant tournament. I think Euro 2016 felt a bit like a blur, of the new format and, the teams finishing third being able to qualify. But I think this time around, we're slowly getting used to that new format and the extra kind of two groups that have been added on. But I think just, watching the games this season have been so entertaining. And, even a smaller game, whether it was like a Slovakia against Poland, was a very, very entertaining game. And now, we're in the knockout stages and we're seeing some of the smaller teams. I mean, I want to say smaller teams, but the likes of Switzerland, Czech Republic, challenging the top dogs in the Netherlands and France. And I think all we have to do is watch, I think, Monday's two games. I think it was Spain, Croatia, and France, Switzerland. And that for me just sums up the tournament. Unpredictable, entertaining, and lots of goals. So I think it's been a good tournament so far, and I'm hoping England can go all the way now.
Yeah, and I think I'd add in Sweden, Ukraine, because I think that was a brilliant game as well.
Yeah.
I said all week, Sweden is a team that we'll probably be facing next if we can beat Germany. But to get a result against Sweden for me was a brilliant result for Ukraine. But there's been some amazing games. Just in terms of, I suppose, from a Chelsea perspective, I read a stat the other day that we've had the most players still involved in the tournament, and this was before this week kicked off. But it's a shame for players like Kai Havertz, who I feel, and I know you mentioned earlier to me, who's had a brilliant Euros. Could arguably say had a really good end to the Premier League season as well. But what went wrong for Germany? Because they're a team that they're not the best German team that I think. As I'm a bit older, I've seen a lot of good German teams, but what happened to Germany at the Euros?
They faced England. That's what happened. No, I think I really like this German side. Actually, I think they're going through a transition phase. If I'm honest, I think what the World Cup in 2018 kind of was the end of a generation. You saw the likes of players like Özil, Philipp Lahm, Schweinsteiger. I think they had their last couple their tournament in Euro 2016, and then that World Cup in 2018 was a new batch of players that were completely inexperienced. I think Timo Werner was playing his first international tournament. But I think now it's a new generation of talent, the likes of Kai Havertz, Gosens, Kimmich, all these players. And it was also Joachim Löw's last ever tournament as a Germany boss. So I think it's a bit of a transition period. I think a lot of the top sides went through the same kind of period. I think France had it, after World Cup 2010, when, the likes of Malouda and Nelka, all those players kind of departed and they brought in a new batch of players. Same thing with the Spain team, maybe after the World Cup in 2014 or Euro 2016. And now we're seeing a great new batch of players. So I think it's kind of, I'm really expecting big things from Germany in the World Cup next summer in Qatar. I want to say it's not summer, next winter now in Qatar. But I think it's a very exciting team. I think all we have to do is look at Kai Havertz from Chelsea, and he had a brilliant Euros, as you mentioned. Timo Werner playing his second international tournament. He was at the World Cup in Russia in 2018. But I think Kai Havertz was the star of the show for Germany. He was unlucky not to score two. I think it was counted as an own goal against Portugal.
Yeah.
But he was very, very good. And we have to remember he's only 22. And he's building on that kind of solid end to the season he had with Chelsea. And I think alongside Jorginho and Christensen, he was the best Chelsea player at the Euros, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just looking at the list of the players that are still involved in the sort of knockout stages, we've got obviously Dave, as we like to call him, scored a brilliant goal, by the way. Can't forget that. Brilliant goal for Spain. Batshuayi, who I'm sure is just there to, in a way, to make up the numbers. I don't think he'll get much game time, but Jorginho, who you've mentioned as well, arguably probably out of the Chelsea players is probably the one that stands out for me. He's had some brilliant games for Italy, and I don't want to dub them the dark horses. I don't think that's the right term for them, but looks more to me like it's going to be an Italy-England final potentially, which would be brilliant. But Jorginho's been brilliant. He's been putting some brilliant displays. Alongside him in the Italian squad is Emerson as well. He's still there. Christensen, who you mentioned, Mason Mount, Ben Chilwell, and Reece James. So we've still got a good, complement of players still at the Euros. Just wanted to switch it over to England, because obviously we've got, like I mentioned, the three players there. Arguably, I think Chilwell started one of the games, and Reece James as well. But in terms of Mason Mount, he's got to start the next game, surely.
Yeah, he started the first two against Croatia and Scotland. And I think it's fair to say England weren't really geared up for those two games. I felt, whereas against Germany, they looked really up to it. So I think if Mason Mount manages to get back into this team, then I think we'll see the best of Mason Mount, like we were seeing towards that second half of the season at Chelsea. And he seems to be one of Southgate's favourites as well. I'm still baffled by that decision for him to go into self-isolation alongside Chilwell, for coming into contact with Billy Gilmour, even though the Scottish players were playing ping pong with him the day before, and he was hugging his manager. God knows what happened in the dressing room after. But I think Mason Mount, similar to Kai Havertz, very young but still very experienced after the last two seasons he's had, and he's a type of player that will relish the type of game against Ukraine. So I think he should be starting, but then again, so should Grealish, Foden, and all these other quality players we have in up front for England. Reece James, I think he started against Scotland, had a decent game. I don't think the delivery was there for him at time. There's a video of Sterling and Reece James, and Sterling decides to try to dribble rather than pass it to Reece James. And we know that Reece James has got a very, very good delivery. But overall, I think he had a decent game. He cleared it off the line at one point against Scotland. So if we do go for that back three of wing backs, I think Chilwell and Reece James are very good options at wing back, having played in that role for Chelsea pretty much all season, or at least the Tuchel half of the season. So they're very good options to have against Ukraine. And should we play a Denmark or a Czech Republic in the semi-finals, or maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. But yeah, I think the Chelsea boys in the England squad I want to be seeing more of them as it currently stands.
Yeah, and I echo that a lot. I think it must be tough for Southgate, and the reason I say that is because he has got, he's got a luxury midfield to choose from. You look at, like you mentioned, Foden, Grealish, Sterling, Jadon Sancho hasn't even, I think he's played 10 minutes of the tournament so far. So it's going to be harsh on one of the midfield players, whoever drops out. I do think Grealish has to stay in there. I think he changes the game, but I do think Mason Mount will also give you that second option of just trying to do something. Whereas there's times when you watch England and it is almost very defensive and very just reserved. But I think sometimes in knockout football, you've got to take it to your opponent. You've got to be able to. You can't rely on a 1-0. I don't think in a tournament game. It's just not. Group stages, yeah, fair enough. But I think in terms of the knockout stages, you need at least 2 goals. You need to be comfortable in the game, and I think Mason Mount does that. He's one of the ones that we've mentioned on here in the past, that he's probably the first name on the team sheet as well. I would go as far as to say, maybe I'm a bit biased, but I'd go as far as to say he's got to be one of the first to be thought about in terms of England as well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, especially at the start of the tournament. I think he was the first name on Southgate's team sheet for every one of those group stage games before the isolation incident. What I like with Mount, he's the type of player that he's just got so much energy. 90 minutes, he can play those 90 minutes and still give that, that same tenacity and energy towards the end. And what I think he does that maybe Foden and Grealish don't do is that kind of defensive side to his game, where he can slot as a centre mid, maybe alongside a Bellingham, a Rice, or a Phillips, and also offer that defensive ability and win the ball back, which we saw at times at Chelsea. So I think against Ukraine, I think Southgate's got a really I want to say pleasant headache or dilemma to choose between all those, midfield options. But I'd love to see more of Mount at the Euros for sure.
Yeah, and if we do, we do eventually, and again, forward thinking, if we do end up going to the final, what a season it would be in terms of capping it off with obviously brilliant Premier League season for Mason Mount as a individual rather than as a team, but winning the Champions League and then potentially winning the Euros as well, and then the Super Cup. It could be the best start to his season that he could be asking for. But let's turn our attention to Belgium. Let's go to Belgium first, because as much as we've got Batshuayi, but you look at the team. Obviously, Eden Hazard, ex-Chelsea player; Thibaut Courtois, ex-Chelsea player; Romelu Lukaku, ex-Chelsea. So I do have a slight interest in Belgium for that reason, because a lot of our players are from Belgium. So what's your thoughts on Belgium?
I think they're a very good side, and I was talking to my brother the other day, and we both agreed that players like Kevin De Bruyne, Lukaku, and Eden Hazard, who are approaching their late 30s now, late 20s, early 30s, deserve an international trophy. And I think I'm not sure if KDB and Eden Hazard will be fit for the Italy game. They're still, I think, ready to race against time, which is what Roberto Martinez said. But I think offensively, they've got it all. Thorgan Hazard's having a brilliant Euros. He's almost stealing the spotlight from his brother. And Lukaku, that game he played against, I think it was against Finland, where he just looked like anything he'd shoot would score and just bullying past defenders. But what does worry me slightly with Belgium is maybe their defence. Alderweireld, Vertonghen, Vermaelen are players that maybe 4 or 5 years ago, you class them in that world-class bracket, or at least, of high quality. But this time around, they're starting to get a bit, off the pace, a bit older. And Italy have that pace up front. We saw it. Chiesa, Insigne are players that will cause them problems, I think. So I think it's going to be a very, very cagey game. I think it completely depends on maybe De Bruyne's fitness, maybe over Hazard based on the seasons that they've had. But I do agree. As a Chelsea fan, we still love watching Eden Hazard, and we wish him still the best. So if England don't win it, I'm almost rooting for Belgium after England. So I really kind of hope they do get a result against Italy, and I like to see both Hazard and De Bruyne fit, so we get a better game as well.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Be a hard one, because obviously, like you mentioned, it'd be good for some of those players that have come through at Chelsea to walk away with something. But if it's at the cost of repeating Euro '96 for me, I don't think it can happen. But Billy Gilmour, we've mentioned him before, but in terms of his Premier League club status, low move to Norwich looks like it's on the cards. Good move.
Yes, I think it's a really good move. You look at a lot of those Chelsea players that have come in the last season or two, they've had 1 or 2 loan moves. Mount went to Vitesse, then he went to Derby. Abraham had a move at Aston Villa. Then before that, he was on loan at,
Derby.
I think it was Bristol. Was it Bristol?
City.
Bristol City, I think. And same thing with Reece James. He had an amazing loan at Wigan Athletic. So I think it is the next logical step. I think he'll be a bit, he'd want to get into that Chelsea first team, having had a few chances in the starting 11 under different managers as well. But I think if he gets that consistent amount of game time in the Premier League at a Norwich City side who have just come up, maybe they're looking to bring in some new talent, I think will be a really good loan move. The one thing that does worry me, and we did speak about this offline, is if we do suffer an injury to one of Kante, Kovacic, or Jorginho, then we don't really have that kind of, natural centre midfielder to come in and maybe, or be on the bench and cover in case one of them, has fatigue or suffers an injury. So that's possibly where you look at, even though they're not natural centre midfielders, but a Barkley or Loftus-Cheek possibly coming back, but they're more offensive, I feel. Then maybe Tuchel might rely on Mount to kind of drop back in that centre mid role rather than play offensively. So I think that's going to be quite interesting to look at as well. But definitely overall a really good move if he gets that consistent game time. And I know that their manager, Daniel Farke, has a good relationship with Thomas Tuchel as well. So I think maybe they spoke about this, about possibly sending some Chelsea players out on loan to Norwich. But I think watching him get a lot of Premier League minutes will be really enjoyable for a Chelsea fan.
Yeah, and I think he's, in terms of how he played, obviously at the Euros. I mean, he was, especially in the England game, he was brilliant. You forget how young he is and how technically gifted he is as a footballer, just for the ability that he's got. And I agree. I think any club that gets him on loan, very similar to Conor Gallagher. I think that was a brilliant move for him last season at West Brom, albeit it didn't work out for him in terms of West Brom being relegated. But I just think it's a brilliant move for him. He's going to get minutes, which is what he needs. Is he really going to get that at Chelsea with the midfield that we've got already? I agree with you. I think in terms of injuries, you look at the season that we've got ahead of us as well. The World Club as well. We've got a lot of fixtures to play, so I do agree with you. Questions me whether we're going to bring someone else in. I personally don't think Loftus-Cheek, Barkley, Drinkwater, I think those players will be moved on. I really do. I think it's a shame for Loftus-Cheek because I think he had a lot of ability, and I do agree with you. He's more offensive than he's more as a defensive midfielder. But I just think the cruciate injuries just finished him. I don't think we're going to see the best of him. I might be wrong, but it'd be interesting to see what we do. And I think we have to recruit. I do think we have to recruit someone, whether it's a main starter or someone. We have to bring in that depth because we've seen other clubs do it where they haven't done that. You look at the likes of a Liverpool. I'll use them as an example, but they didn't replace some of their key players, and when the injuries came in, you noticed a massive gap. So we don't want that to happen to us. Obviously, we want to try and win the Premier League next season. So I agree. It'd be a good move for him, but we've got to be careful ourselves as well.
Yeah, I agree. And just last thing on that, Gilmore performance against England, it was amazing. It almost reminded me of Kante, and we have to forget how young. We forget how young he is because it was such a mature performance, and it was such a shame for him that he couldn't play in that final game against Croatia. Because I felt maybe had he played with that form that he would have carried on from the England game, maybe Scotland may have stood a chance, even though they don't maybe have the other ability around the pitch. But yeah, he needs minutes, and I do agree that if he leaves, maybe we should look into bringing in another midfield to cover, as we don't want to repeat those mistakes that Liverpool made with not having that centre back to replace Van Dijk, or even a centre mid when Henderson was out. So, agree.
Okay, last couple of questions on the Euros. How do you see it going? Obviously, we've got Belgium, Italy, Switzerland, Spain, Ukraine, England, Czech Republic, and Denmark. What's your journey from there onwards to the final, and who wins it?
I think on the other side to England, so starting with the Belgium-Italy game, as I mentioned, if De Bruyne and Hazard are fit, I think Belgium will win. Because I was at Wembley for the Italy-Austria game, and despite Italy being very, very solid in those group stage games, I didn't feel like they were up to it against Austria at times. They looked a bit sloppy, losing possession. And the times that Austria did attack, they looked like they were going to, they threatened. So I think Belgium might have just a little bit more offensively than Italy to make it to the semis. And I do think Spain as well, they're starting to really show their true ability now in the knockout stage, like we saw against Croatia, scoring 5, and they've scored 10 in the last 2 games. And what I like with the Spanish side is that they've got not just one goal scorer, they've got lots of different goal scorers, the likes of Ferran Torres, Morata, Sarabia. Yeah. So I think even the Moreno from Villarreal. Yeah. So I think it will be a Belgium-Spain final, Belgium getting to the final. And then I think it will be an England-Denmark semi-final. And I've just got flashbacks of World Cup 2018 when we lost to Croatia, and I'm feeling a similar game. But I feel like what I like with this Danish side, they're very united. I feel they're extremely united after the Christian Eriksen incident. Yeah. And we haven't spoken about Christensen, but Christensen had a brilliant Euros as well. So
that goal as well.
That goal against Russia. Yeah. I've never thought he had it in him. We never saw that at Chelsea, So I think he'll score next season for Chelsea. He'll get his first Chelsea goal. But I hate to say this, but I think Denmark will get to the final. I think it will be a Belgium-Denmark final. And I think Belgium will win it in the final.
Yeah. And I've been shouting about Belgium for so many years, the last 2 international tournaments, and you do feel they're on that horizon. If they don't really do it now, some, like you mentioned, some of their players are kind of getting to that 30 mark, and you do wonder, is the next crop of players that will make it into the international team, are they going to be as good as the team that they've got now? So it's going to be tough. I mean, I'm always saying it's coming home, jokingly.
Me too.
But,
Me too. Don't worry.
yeah, but it's going to be tough. I still think Italy will progress to the final. Arguably, I have to say, at the games I've watched, I kind of do agree with you around Denmark. You see that unity around them, and it's going to be a tough game if we can beat Ukraine. But it's going to be a tough game either way. It's going to be an entertaining Saturday. I think there's two good. Well, the remaining games are brilliant, but I think Saturday is going to be a good day. Hopefully for all of us. I've cleared my calendar. Nothing's happening on Saturday, so it'll be interesting. Looking forward to it. And I think the final's next Sunday, the 11th. I think so. Yeah, looking forward to it. But we shall see. We shall see.
So is it England or Denmark? You didn't say in the final.
I'm on the fence.
Okay.
Let's move over to the Chelsea sort of latest transfer news. Because I think 7 players have left. The key ones being obviously Willy, Caballero. Jamal Blackman's also left as well. So that's 2 goalkeepers gone, and Marco van Ginkel amongst the players that have left. But does that leave us with an issue in terms of our goalkeepers?
I do. I think it does, because when you look at this season, Kepa was our reserve keeper. I think Caballero only played that goal at those 2 games at the start of the season against West Brom, after Kepa made a few mistakes against Liverpool, and the game against Barnsley at home. And this was before Mendy signed for us, obviously. Yeah. So Kepa then became our reserve, our second choice goalkeeper, and it's looking like Kepa might be sent out on loan or maybe sold. So especially if Sarri wants to take him at Lazio, that's a possibility, which leaves us with no kind of second choice goalkeeper right now. As it stands, we don't really have a third choice goalkeeper. So I think that there's talks of. I'm trying to remember his name. I think it's Carl Ziger. I think he's an academy goalkeeper, but there's talks of maybe him being our third choice. Yeah. But if we need a second choice, I was kind of analysing the options. This is not just based on rumours, but what I think would make sense for Chelsea. And I think when you're looking for a second choice goalkeeper, you're looking at someone who's happy to play second fiddle, who maybe is approaching towards the end of his career, that maybe wants a new move, a new opportunity, and maybe better money as well. So the 3 options that I kind of looked at or think would make sense for Chelsea were Ben Foster from Watford. He's 38. Maybe we'll get him. He's a short-term solution, maybe a bit like Caballero, Rob Green.
Yeah. And he's a decent keeper.
He's a very decent keeper.
So yeah.
Very decent keeper, Premier League experience, England international. I think now he's second choice to at Watford, because I think they've signed the Austria keeper Bachmann. Yeah. I think he's quite solid as well. And so I'd be happy to have Ben Foster as a second choice. The other 2 keepers I've looked at were Robin Olsen from the Swedish goalkeeper, who was on loan at Everton last season.
He had a good spell at Everton.
He had a good spell, but I think at times he made a few mistakes. But I'm basing him on what I saw at the Euros, and he was very, very good for Sweden in those group stage games. I think he managed to keep a clean sheet against a very good Spanish team. And he's owned by Roma. He's a Roma player at the moment, and I think he's now probably not wanted by Roma because I think he's called Paul Lopez as their first choice. So I think Robin Olsen may be an option. And then the last one, which I think would make the most sense, is Vicente Guaita from Crystal Palace. He's 34. He lives in London probably, and I think maybe he'll be tempted by a move to a bigger Premier League club. And every time I've watched Guaita, he's made some amazing saves. And I think it was 2 seasons ago, I think he was linked to a move to Chelsea actually. Yeah. So there'll be chances maybe we revive that kind of move. But we want an experienced keeper, but also quite a solid backup, being Chelsea. So I think those 3 goalkeepers that I mentioned would make sense in my opinion, but it's completely based on what I think and not the rumours. Yeah. But I'm curious to see what you'd think about our keeper situation.
It's tough. I think I'd like to see Kepa stay, if I'm honest.
I do as well, actually.
I want to see him stay, and for 2 reasons. I want him to fight for the number 1 jersey, number 1 spot, albeit he's number 1, but I want him to get, because when he's played for under Tuchel, he hasn't actually been that bad. And that tells me that there's been some swap or change within the coaching for the goalkeepers. could be confidence. I don't know, but he's not been as bad as he was when he was under Sarri, and obviously the times under Frank Lampard as well. But if he stays, I think we haven't got an issue, because I think there's another youth goalkeeper who's pretty decent. I think his name's Jamie Cummings.
Yeah,
Jamie Cummings,
yeah.
I think, as well. So I think he's on the brink of probably breaking into the senior squad. He could potentially be the third goalkeeper, third choice, if we can keep Kepa. It all depends on whether Kepa wants first team. You know, he wants to be playing week in, week out, and if that's the case, you do look at a loan move for him, because I don't realistically, we're not going to sell him for the fee that we got him for. So it's whether, you know, what club wants to take him on as well. Does he go back to Spain, or does he go, you know, to another European league? But if we can keep Kepa, I'll be happy. If not, out of those three that you mentioned, because to be honest, I struggled this morning when you mentioned it. I did struggle to pile a list of goalkeepers together, but I think Olsen would probably be the one I'd go for. I watched him a lot for Everton, and he did make a lot of mistakes. I'll be honest, he did make some really costly mistakes for Everton, but I always say the goalkeeper's only as good as the defence that's in front of him, and he's going to have a totally different, you know, he's going to have Thiago in front of him, he's going to have Christensen, Zuma, obviously Reece James can play right centre-back as well, so he's going to have a totally different defence in front of him. I do think Olsen would be maybe Olsen or Foster, because of the experience that he's got. You know, he's got that level of experience that we kind of need as your third goalkeeper. So I do think it's an issue, because you know, we've seen it before. I think the year when Cech and Cudicini both got injured, and we had Hilario playing Champions League games for us, which, you know, he done really well. But just in terms of that, kind of, it could happen. You know, things do happen in football. So yeah, I think it's going to be a dilemma. I think Tuchel will sort it. I think he'll obviously, I'm sure, speak to Kepa. If Kepa wants to go, then I'm sure he'll bring in someone just with that level of quality that he knows that we're going to need as well.
Yeah, I agree. Similarly to you, I think if I had to choose, I'd rather Kepa stays. And I think he's a very good, solid backup. And we saw it in that Tuchel stint, how good he was in the games he played. Clean sheet at Wembley against Man City, and among some other good performances. But the one thing I do like I think now I'm thinking about Ben Foster, he'll bring some experience to the dressing room, and he'll be able to kind of, you know, teach some knowledge to the likes of Mendy, and if someone like Ziga or Cummings as our third choice. Yeah. So a bit like Rob Green did when he came, you know, for that one season. You know, I feel like he was a big presence in the dressing room, and he wasn't. I think there's that interview where he said he wasn't scared to speak up to Sarri, you know, when things weren't going right. He's, you know, claiming he didn't have a plan B. So I think Ben Foster will be a great addition, character, experience, and will be able to teach a lot to some of the younger players. But if I had to choose, I'd rather Kepa stays.
Yeah, I agree. And just in terms of goalkeepers, I read yesterday that Ross Turnbull is due to take a coaching role at Chelsea. So he's at Hartlepool at the moment, and he's coming back to Chelsea as part of the coaching staff. So it kind of tells you that there are talks, or maybe, I don't know, some sort of flutters around to say that there is going to be some sort of change within the goalkeeper structure. So it'll be interesting. I think it was only yesterday that was announced. So to see Ross Turnbull back at Chelsea is good as well. I really liked him. I know he was never really given the first choice goalkeeper at any point, but you know, when he did play for us, he wasn't that bad either. So it'd be good to have him back at the club.
Agree. And maybe even Petr Cech might get another year, you know, as a pay-as-you-go contract or whatever it was.
He's still got it. So
he's still got it for sure. Yeah.
Then we can go in for him. But I know we're sick to death of talking about him, but Haaland, what's your thoughts so far? Because we haven't spoken a while about him, to be fair.
No, it's been a while.
Obviously, Jadon Sancho to United looks like it's almost pretty much done now. They're just waiting on medicals. So
yeah.
What does that spell for Dortmund? Can they afford to lose Jadon Sancho and Haaland in the same season?
You are thinking if they've sold Sancho now for 72 million, I think they pay every year over the next 5 years. But maybe you're thinking we've sold this player for this much. Maybe we can afford to lose Haaland now next season for, I think his buyout clause is 75 million if I'm not mistaken. So maybe they'd want to keep him for another season, go as far as they can in the Champions League, challenge in the Bundesliga, and then lose him for a cut fee next season. But as a Chelsea fan, you just dream of having him. We've missed out on Hakimi now, which was the other big, player we were trying to sign in a different position, but maybe not really as a position that we needed to strengthen as much, maybe as our striker position. But if we were Chelsea, I think we should be going all out for Haaland. But it's going to be trickier now, maybe negotiating with Dortmund after they've sold a player for so much, and also another offensive player. So you do wonder, and that's what I'm starting to think, maybe if we do sign him, it will involve Hudson-Odoi and Abraham somehow as well. So it'll be interesting.
And it's interesting you mentioned Tammy, because I think 45 million's been reported from Aston Villa as the fee that they're hoping to try and get him for. I'll be honest, I don't think Tammy goes anywhere unless we get a Haaland or we get someone in that's going to be replacing him. There's talk now, I think, of Olivier Giroud still staying as well. With the AC Milan stuff, I think that kind of conversation's broken down with AC Milan. So it would be interesting now that obviously France aren't in the Euros. I'm sure that conversation will escalate and go a lot quicker. But just in terms of Tammy, I do feel like if we sell him for 45 million, we kind of, I mean, that's a bargain for someone who can score goals.
I was going to say, I think we're winning with 45 million. I actually think that's a really good price, especially based on the season that he's just had now, where he hasn't really played properly since January. I think that's a very good price, and then we can invest that maybe in someone like Haaland. But as it stands right now, I think it's more likely Giroud leaves than Abraham possibly. I don't think that 1-year contract really means a lot. I think it looks, just a fee, maybe just almost like a safety net in case the Haaland or the Lukaku deal, which seems like it has fell through now, those deals don't happen. So I think possibly maybe he might even stay at Chelsea and play, a backup role to whichever striker we sign, and Giroud is the one who ends up leaving to go to AC Milan. But I think 45 million for Tammy, if I'm honest, I think is a lot. So I'd be happy with that.
I think it's a steal. I think it's an absolute steal. I think the prices that players are going for in today's world, I think it's a steal. He's a proven goal scorer. I think he did it for Aston Villa. He done it for the season when our first season under Frank Lampard as well. He was very, he played really well. He showed spells of it this season or last season under Tuchel. He hasn't had the best times, and I don't know why that is, but I think it's an absolute steal for a 23-year-old in English player as well. English players normally go for a little bit more, but yeah, I think like you said, if we can get 45 for him, we can invest it into someone else. But I just wanted to quickly read off some of the free agents as of today. I'm not gonna. Well, I will mention him, but I'm just mentioning him because he's on the list. But we can't get him. Lionel Messi.
I did see a couple like Photoshop pictures on Instagram today of him alongside Mount in Chelsea kits, but it's not going to happen.
I'm not going to rule it out, but I think he'll. I can't really see him going anywhere.
We're always going to have the name of our club alongside Messi's name being Chelsea, but I can't see it happening. If I'm honest, he's a free agent, but I think he'll sign an extension at Barca in the coming days. I think so.
I think they've wanted that contract to run out for a very valid reason, and it's probably to throw a few more clauses in there and to change a lot of the contracts. And I think it's probably going to work best for both. If they can just sign a new contract. I don't know why they didn't do that in the first place, but maybe there's something in there that it's easier for them just to have a new contract drawn up. But another player that has been linked with us, and we did speak about it on the last episode, and it's sort of grown a bit of legs now, is Sergio Ramos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been reading the rumours. Apparently, I think we're the favourites now. I think I saw alongside PSG maybe. But I think if we sign him, I'll be really happy because I think he's an experienced player. He'll bring everything that Thiago Silva brought to the club last season. Having the two, together would be a very experienced back line, maybe alongside a Christensen or a Zuma. Obviously, you've got Rudiger and Aspi as well. So I think we'll be spoiled for choices with centre-back if we sign him. But maybe that would spell the end of Zuma's time at Chelsea. I'm not sure as well. But he's a player that I've always appreciated watching. So if we sign him, then I'd be really happy. But I think he'll demand some high money as well in terms of wages. 100%. That's for sure.
And I don't think we realistically need him. I think we saw Ethan Ampadu there as well, who can play that role. I'm sure he'll try and fight for a place as well. Who also had a very good, albeit I don't think his red card was a red card.
No, very harsh, very harsh.
Red card. But I'm sure he'll fight for his place at Chelsea, or if not, I'm sure he'll go on loan. But would you like to see the return of Juan Mata at Chelsea?
From a Chelsea perspective, yes, just to see him in a Chelsea kit at Stamford Bridge, I'd love that. You know, he's one of my favourite players between that 2012, 2014 period. And I think, I don't have the stats at the top of my head, but the amount of assists, goals and assists he recorded, I think in the Europa League season, the first time we won it against Benfica, was ridiculous, you know. So, but I think realistically, I don't think we need a player like Mata in the team. And if we are going to sign an ex-player, I'd rather it be maybe Eden Hazard, you know. So I'm going to have to say no to Juan, even though it kind of pains me to say it.
Yeah. Okay. Next, we've got, which I'm going to say no already, but I'm going to ask you, Mario Balotelli.
No.
No explanation needed.
No.
Let's move on. So Frank Ribery is next. I'm not sure how old he is. Surely he's got to be. I wouldn't take him if I'm honest.
No, I don't think I would. I think he's got a bad injury record.
38.
I think, you know, he's 38 years old. Very good player. Don't get me wrong. You know, he was probably robbed of the Ballon d'Or. I think in 2013. I think it was.
Yeah.
And but again, it's a position we don't really need a player in. And I say no to all these players, but I just know that if they do come in, their experience will bring a lot to us. That's for sure. But I'm saying no to him.
Yeah, I've got two more. I'm not going to read out the full list, but the second one is Ben Arthur.
Hatem Ben Arfa, is that?
Hatem Ben Arfa.
No.
And this one's going to be controversial, so I've just saved it till last. But David Luiz, who's now out of contract.
Again, centre back. I think if we are going to sign an out of contract centre back, I'd rather be Sergio Ramos. Yeah. But I think what we saw with David Luiz at Arsenal, it's just like I think he is finished. But I just do know as well that if he's alongside better players at Chelsea, he'll bring more to the team. But I think it's maybe a return to Benfica's on the cards. I also saw maybe a move to Marseille. So even PSG, I think PSG were linked with a move to him as well. So I'm saying no to David as well. Sorry.
Yeah. So out of that list, we'd take Sergio Ramos.
I think I would now when I've thought about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we would, I suppose, for the experience.
Yeah.
Mata, maybe so. But yeah, Haaland's got to be the one. I'm going to say it on every podcast episode, actually. Haaland's got to be the one. We've lost out on Lukaku now. Obviously, Jadon Sancho, which I kind of thought we had an interest in. Hakimi, another player we've lost. So I think we've got to put all our eggs in one basket now and just go for Haaland.
Last thing I saw on Twitter is Fabregas has been full praise of, I think it's a Monaco player called Tchouameni. I think he scored. And he's kind of, I think there's rumours apparently that I read. I'm not sure if they're true, but he might retire next season and have a coaching role at Chelsea. And is wanting to bring this player with him to Chelsea. I think he's called Tchouameni. So if Fabregas rates him, then I rate him, obviously. So keep an eye out for him as well.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. But it's got a couple of interesting weeks coming up, obviously. Quarterfinals, semi-finals, final of the Euros. I think pre-season starts not long after that. I think it's only like 2 weeks after, a week after the Euros finishes.
Yeah.
We get back into the Premier League. So I'm looking forward to that, of course.
First week of pre-season is always a bit odd, seeing as Chelsea players return that you never thought would be back at Cobham. You know, the likes of Baba Rahman, Bakayoko and all that. So it's going to be quite a funny one.
Yeah, well, hopefully they've got new clubs in the nicest way possible. But yeah, as always, you can follow us on Twitter at From the Shed End, all one word. On Instagram as well, you can follow us at From the Shed End with underscore between each of the words. Theo, do you want to just give your socials?
Yep, so you can follow me at Seski Time, Seski spelled the Cesc Fabregas way, and then Time, post a lot about football, Euros related at the moment, and obviously a lot of Chelsea content, so give me a follow and engage with me.
Yeah, and I've changed my socials now. This is T. Changed it, couldn't be bothered with the producer anymore. I don't really make music, haven't made music for a year or so, but yeah, follow me. Let's enjoy the banter together, and like and subscribe on YouTube. We need those subscribers to click on the subscribe button, so please subscribe to our YouTube channel From the Shed End as well. This has been another episode of From the Shed End podcast. Thank you very much for listening.